but the real basic issue is the removal of slaw from power and the restoration in Burma of some kind of popularly elected or consented to government. Now, let me stop and ask, am I speaking too fast? Am I using language that you do not understand? Yeah. Now, I've told you nothing that you do not know. And the only value, I suppose, is that, as Orlando has pointed out, I am an experienced person in this field, and I can reaffirm that your basic position, that Burma is not free under these generals and needs to be free, is one that certainly I support, and I think many people of my experience and background also support. I think I've also made another point, which is that while the case of Daw Aung San Suu Kyi is important, it's not the basic issue. The basic issue is the removal from power of the dictating generals. So the question becomes how and at what cost? And you all know that there are various options which range from, at one end of the spectrum, full-scale warfare, and I suppose the other end of the spectrum is prayer and the belief that the passage of time will change things. You see, these are two extremes. Let's look at both of them. If there were to be an uprising against the generals, many people would die. I think they would fight, they would kill many, many people. The possibility of winning such a civil war is not high. The cost would be enormous, and the possibility of getting the right outcome is not high. And you also have the problem in a revolutionary situation like that of knowing who would succeed the generals, who would come in instead. The problem that revolutionary uprising raises is that sometimes it brings to power a group of people who turn out to be not much better than the ones you removed, because they too are not popularly elected. They have won at the point of a gun at great cost, and they feel justified. They feel we have won this revolutionary war, and we can therefore make this country in whatever fashion that we determine, because we are those who have spilled our blood to win. And so there would be great bloodshed, there would be an uncertain outcome. You wouldn't know whether you would win a civil war or not. And thirdly, just perhaps almost as important as anything else, although bloodshed is very important, thirdly, you don't know what you would get instead. Now, the other end of the spectrum is the belief in history and the belief in the will of God, if you like, that with the passage of time, wrongs will be righted, will be brought to rights. These men will die. There may be others after them who recognise the great harm that these generals have done to Burma and try to change things. The problem with prayer and waiting for time to pass is that it's too slow. I don't mean to be disrespectful to God, but sometimes God takes a long time to fix things up. The real problem with that is that it can be far too slow, and it has already been too long. Too much time has already passed for the people of Burma to suffer for a very long, a much further, longer time is not something that anyone, I think, could sensibly accept, much as one might believe in prayer. So somewhere in between these two extremes, I suggest, is a set of actions that may not work immediately, but should be taken in order to keep up momentum, even if it's only small momentum, but to keep up momentum towards the liberation of Burma from slaughter. And these include some small things and some large things. The small things start with you, community groups. People who know the circumstances, who have family and relatives in Burma, who are aware of how important this issue is, they must continue to meet, to speak, to conduct research, to know the facts, to write letters to people in Burma, to find out what is going on, and to keep yourself fully aware of the situation, in full communication with each other about it, so that you are in a position to do the second thing, which is to make known wherever you can what the circumstances are and how wrong they are. And that means through other community groups that you might work in. You may be in a Karen group, but you might also have links to the Australian Overseas Development Agency, or to the newspapers or the television stations. In your profession, I think you said you're a medical doctor, so in the medical profession, wherever you go. The second thing, first of all, remember to make yourself aware and always active on the issue. But secondly, to produce that information to others, to make sure when people are drawing up their agenda in their workplace, in their own heads, in their churches, in their communities, in their political parties, that their agenda of the things that are wrong with the world and need to be changed always includes Burma. Not just climate change, world energy situation, global financial crisis, but always includes Burma. Then the third thing you should do is identify significant sources of influence over the problem. And they begin with our own Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, our own Australian Government Department concerned with international relations, and extends outwards to the United Nations. And there, it's important for you to continue to keep in front of Stephen Smith, the Department of Foreign Affairs, Kevin Rudd, the Secretary General of the United Nations, must keep in front of those people the reality that Burma is not right. It is a bad situation. And when they draw up their list of things to do, that it always includes action on Burma. Another important thing, I've got two more suggestions to make. That what I said to you, you probably already do in some measure. But what I'm trying to say is that discouraged as you may sometimes feel, you mustn't be. Even little community groups are important. If they were to disappear, if you were to stop focusing on the problem and talking with each other about it, you can be sure that nothing will change. If you stop looking for other groups and individuals that you can communicate with and send the message to, then they won't know if you don't tell them. Then the really important sources of influence, like Foreign Minister Smith, Prime Minister Rudd, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and so on, these are people whom you must never think of them getting up in the morning and thinking, Ban Ki-moon thinking, what are the biggest problems in the world? What are the big unsolved problems that I must have my organisation, the UN, address today? Think of it as an agenda. There must always be on his list the word Burma. I think it is. That's why he went there 10 days ago, knowing that they would treat him badly and give him nothing. People said he shouldn't go. People wrote in the newspapers he shouldn't go because it would be such a terrible loss of face for him